There once was a player named AJ. When it came to hockey, man, he could play. Won the Calder Cup with Carey Price, scored the winning goal, man, that's nice, and we're honored to be interviewing him today. He wrote a kid's book with his best friend, Sean, about his life up until the cup he'd won. Diagnosed at 16 with diabetes, and it wasn't from eating his Wheaties, he didn't get depressed or become withdrawn. He continued to play and to win, being named team captain again and again. He learned about Bobby Clark, and I think that lit a spark. I also think that's where his greatness did begin. There is a lesson to be learned from this great son, and he's sharing it across this land with everyone. Just because you face a hurdle doesn't mean you have to turtle. You can still accomplish what your heart's set on. The book is called Stand Out, There's No Preamble. It's written by Ajay Baines and Sean Campbell. If it hits you in the heart, and with some money you want to part, send it to Diabetes Canada. That ain't no gamble.
And now a 2-on-1 for the Bulldogs. Got the air and Baines. Got the air up the right side. Centers. Baines shoots. Goal!
We're here with Ajay Baines and Sean Campbell. They're the authors of a book called Stand Out, and it's about AJ's growing up with hockey, dealing with diabetes, being a star hockey player with the Kamloops Blazers, and winning the Memorial Cup. Not the Memorial Cup.
Calder Cup.
Close.
And winning the Calder Cup with the Montreal farm team, the Hamilton Bulldogs. So say hi, guys.
How's it going, everybody?
Hey, guys.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
So good to have you aboard. We're just going to get right into some questions.
Well, with your book, Stand Out, we're just wondering, how did this book come about? What was everything that led to it? And maybe tell us the story behind it and whatnot.
Yeah, and me and Sean grew up in Kamloops together, and obviously gone away and lived, but we met each other at a young age and have been great friends ever since. And we both moved back to Kamloops after we got married and started having kids. And we were out at the lake one day, and Sean had actually previously written, he's an author, and he'd written a few books before, but came up to me, we were at the lake, and he just said, I was thinking, what do you think of writing a book about your hockey career? And I was kind of hesitant and just kind of like, no, wasn't too into it. And then he said, how about we do it in a children's style? And then he got me a little curious because I'd seen a couple of children's books and, how great they were. So we started talking, and one thing led to another, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, it was funny too. Like on my side, it's like you grow up with a guy and you have all these like adventures as a kid, and he's just kind of your goofy buddy. And then as you get older and you have kids, it's like, oh man, like what a life! Like kind of a star hockey player as a kid, longest serving captain of the Blazers. Scores the winning goal from the Memorial Cup or so the Calder Cup. Rick, you got me screwed up here.
No worries.
Winning goal of the Calder Cup. And on top of that, like diabetes is a big part of his life, and sort of that's really unique, right? And so that's an amazing story in and of itself, and it just happened to be my buddy. And so once you put all these stories together, it's like, to me, that was like a really obvious, great story that to tell.
It's a natural.
That's awesome.
I'm just curious, how did you guys meet? Like, how young were you? Like, and because Pete and I weren't sure about it, and we had a bit of a disagreement on it. So you can settle an argument.
Oh yeah, no, we were playing soccer against each other was my first recollection. But Sean actually was living up the street from where I was, but we weren't going to the same school because his mom was teaching at a school on the other side of town. So he would just go over there and go to school where he had grown up before. And then when he moved up the street from me, was in grade 7. And then junior high started the next year, and Sean, we started going to the same school. And obviously walking home from school every day,
arguing about hockey and
Yeah.
basketball.
Yeah,
We had all the answers then.
What were some of the challenges in writing this book? So that question is more directed towards you, Sean.
Yeah, you bet.
Had to be tough.
It is really difficult. Like I think there's a lot of ideas floating around out there, but then actually getting down to writing and then rewriting and then it's just very time consuming, and you really never know what it's going to look like at the end. So what was awesome about this process is that usually writing is really solitary, right? You kind of get inside your head and you grind it out until you can get it out in the world. And with this one, I got to work with AJ, and we really, like, where it started wasn't where it ended, and that was a really cool arc of like, okay, what do we want to say? Like, how do we want this to look? How do we want this? What do we want kids to get out of this? And I do think, again, I keep going back to everything's a team, but the more people you have, if more good people you have on your team around publishing books, the better it comes out. Like this is the book I'm most proud of so far, and I think it is the best because of that team dynamic. And then take it a step further. Now that the book's out there and we're talking about it, it's a lot more fun coming on your show, being with a buddy and telling jokes about us growing up. And so it was tough, but it's a lot of fun, and it's very fulfilling once it's out there in the world. It's amazing to kind of see, because you get tagged in social media and stuff about kids that in Kansas or someplace that you never kind of dreamed that it would be, and then maybe you're brightening some kid's day at a children's hospital in a southern state. You like, that stuff almost makes me start bawling, right? Like it's one of those things where it's hard, but it's totally worth it.
You must be so proud.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Like it's something else.
All right, this one is to AJ. Tell us when and how you found out that you had diabetes, and how it affected you in terms of thinking about whether you'll still be able to play hockey and stuff like that.
Yeah, great question. I was 16, so I just finished my second year bantam, my last year bantam, and then remember that summer we were at a under 17 camp for BC. The Canada Games was that summer, so each province had their tryouts during the summer for their provincial teams to represent each province at the Canada Games. And I remember, you're going to camp and you're just so focused on trying to make the team. And we were staying in a dorm, bunk beds and stuff. It's probably like 50 guys maybe, and 20 make the team. And I remember it was really, really hard camp. We were in Soyuz, and I was getting up in the middle of the night, and I was going pee like 3 times a night. And I thought it was originally in your head, you're like, I'm drinking so much water, because you're sweating. We're doing off-ice workouts as well as on the ice a couple times a day, and you're constantly drinking water. So I don't know, you didn't even think, and then you get past the week, ended up making the team, and then we went home. But the next weekend, the team had to meet in Chilliwack for just like a group couple-day practice, because we weren't going to see each other for another couple months before the tournament started. And I remember my dad came and picked me up from Campbell, Chilliwack, and kind of the same thing was going on. And I had to get him to pull the car over like 3-4 times on the side of the road. I couldn't wait to the gas station. What, like, Dad, like, I got to go again. He's like, what's going on here? So you get back home, and then went to the doctor and had a little sore throat, whatever. And then I just told the doc about peeing nonstop, and he said, "Oh, okay, let's take your blood, prick your finger." I had no idea what it was about. I'd obviously heard about diabetes, but I didn't know much about it. And then he's like, "Okay, you're going to go down to the hospital here, and we're going to run some more tests." And you go down, and they do more tests, and they're like, "Okay, you might have diabetes." And okay, first question I asked, like you guys said, Rick, was, "Okay, can I still play hockey?" And they said, "Absolutely." So right away, I'm like, "Okay, this is fine then. You get to play hockey." And he said, "Have you heard of Bobby Clark?" And I said, "Well, absolutely." But I didn't know Bobby Clark had diabetes at that time. You just hear about him. There wasn't much media on it at that time, and we didn't have any of that stuff, right? So, and you get to know it and get to know what you have and what you do, what you need to do. And it was just a learning process after that. But to answer your question, Rick, I was fine. I mean, you're young and you just want to play hockey. I think it was a lot tougher on my parents. I remember, like any parent, you know, when you had it, they took it harder than I did. And now being a parent, I can understand why they took it harder.
I've heard Max Domi describe the day when they pretty much, it was the same thing. On a car ride, they kept having to stop. He was thirsty and he had to pee all the time. And he ended up going to the doctor. It was like, it's so similar. I imagine when you have it at that age, probably when in discovering it, it's probably similar to a lot of kids who have it. You know,
how old was Max again?
I think he was 12. I want to say 12. Right. He was a little younger than you were, but, you know, it's a very similar story. Yeah.
How did you manage your nutritional balance during the game and before and after the game?
Yeah, that's a great
During the game's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be tough.
So, you know what's crazy about that is you always think you're going to go low. You always think you're worried about your blood sugar dropping during the game.
Yeah.
And so you want to have Gatorade. And I remember, like, I mean, the Blazers were great. Hamilton, Montreal, Chicago, and Norfolk. Like, we always had Gatorade, power gels, pop in case it really dropped. And they always had that around, which was great. You got to, you know, back when you were playing, you could eat pasta and all that stuff because I knew I was going to burn a ton, right? Yeah. You wanted to make sure you had energy. But one thing which took me a little bit of getting used to in junior is how high my blood sugar could get before the game. And then it really wouldn't start to come down till like the end of the second period because the adrenaline, it actually shoots your blood sugar up. So I remember sometimes when games would start and I had to learn this, my legs would feel like cinder blocks. And then I remember talking to the doctor one off season and it was like, okay, you might have to take some insulin at the start of the game. So just so it's not shooting up high. Cause when when your sugar goes really high, your legs feel awful. But then when it goes too low, you got no energy, right?
Yeah.
You'll find that happy balance. But yeah, Pete, great question. So I learned to take a little bit of insulin at the start. Practices, for whatever reason, never took insulin before because you just worked. It wasn't that much adrenaline at practice as opposed to a game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The reason why I brought that question up is I got a niece who's type 1 diabetic. And she found out at around your age as well. So I coached her through soccer from U13 through to U19, under 19.
Yeah.
And yeah, he used to have like oranges and Gatorade and like you said, the protein or the power gels and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
And yeah, running all the time. So I totally see where I get it. So you had the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same situation.
Yeah.
Now, back then, we discovered with my niece that curried foods like Indian cuisine is really, really good for people with diabetes. Did you still consume like traditional Indian meals or?
I would. I remember one time, I can't remember, it was my first year with the Blazers because I got to play at home, and I remember I had Indian food one night early in the day before a game, but. One thing I will, but the curry and all that stuff's unreal, but roti would put your sugar through the roof.
Yeah, really? Not good.
Cannot have the bread and the dough and all that.
Yeah,
so, the rice is good, so I had to pretty much cut roti right out.
Not worth it. Not worth it. So good.
We just went for Indian food last week too, so he knows all about it.
What about when you were living away on the East Coast? Did you still manage to get curry meals in, or did you just drop it at that point?
You know, we went to a couple restaurants from time to time. I remember.
You never cooked on your own?
Hey, I wouldn't cook Indian food on my own. Then no, not when I was on. No, like I said, was mainly pastas and all that kind of stuff. It would only be restaurants, yeah. Restaurants.
Cool.
We didn't really have too much. I mean, Hamilton, we used to go to a place all the time. Every couple of weeks, there was an Indian restaurant there. Me and some of the guys would go all the time. But as far as cooking, no, I didn't do too much of that when I was playing.
That's awesome.
Let's go back just a little bit. how did you fall in love with hockey? Like, how did hockey become a thing for you? How old were you, like, when you first started skating and playing hockey?
Yeah, my brother was 8 years older than me, so he was playing hockey before me. So I remember going to his games, watching him play, and then obviously they'd be playing road hockey, and I would want to play. I was quite a bit younger, so they used to put me in net. And then obviously, hockey night in Canada, we watch, any chance we get. The Canucks would be on BC TV.
Yeah.
Whenever we were on, you're watching, and just like you said, you're playing with your friends. You're loving going and playing hockey, and then as you get older, you start getting better, and you start playing on more competitive teams, and it's just kind of gradually, okay, are we gonna continue to do this?
Very similar for me, except never got playing on more competitive teams. I was not good enough. Don, how about you? Did you play hockey at all? Like, did you play hockey with AJ? I'm not, maybe not organized, but
Yeah, like road hockey, right? So he lives in a cul-de-sac. So
awesome,
like
perfect,
classic, right? And yeah, he used to light me up. I think I played goal. Like they put me in goal.
He was a great basketball player.
Yeah. So
yeah. That was actually my next question for both you guys. Did you play any other sports other than hockey?
Yeah, like for me, I grew up with my mom. It was just my mom and I, and so hockey wasn't a real big priority in our household. Like we were kind of a skiing was our big thing,
Okay.
and then I played soccer and basketball, but always loved watching hockey. Like I've always been a big fan of the game. Just couldn't skate, can't stick handle, all the above.
Same here. Okay, this is where it gets really dirty there, AJ. Like I was saying, I grew up in Quesnel. Used to show up to school before school to get all the fisticuffs done and over with back in that era. So I was curious. You're only a few hundred kilometers away of that mentality of life back then. So, yeah, I was just curious to know if you faced the same challenges with, I guess I'm getting at racism. Did you feel that a lot up in Kamloops, or did you have to deal with that?
You know what, Pete? I didn't actually, and that was
so lucky.
Yeah, I know. I had a different experience, and all my friends were Caucasian guys growing up, and yeah, no, I mean, I heard obviously different parts, and people had different experiences, but I was, it was great, even at the rink and at school. I was, I said I was lucky.
Oh boy, were you ever?
I think being amazed. Sorry, not interrupted there, Pete, but like, and I don't know what your skill level was back in the day, but I think like first of all, he's a rad guy, which I mean that has, but like being really good at sports too. That's another thing that just kind of I think that like people looked up to you. Like I don't even think it was like racism. I'd almost say it was the opposite. Like people were like kind of like, wow, like that guy's unreal at soccer. Like he was unreal at soccer. He was unreal at hockey. Like I would say from my vantage point.
Yeah, as I did my research on you, it kind of showed that very well respected player and whatnot, and it just growing up in Kamloops, and then you had all those penalty minutes. I was just like, oh yeah, he's got to be harassed on the ice, or he's just trying to establish dominance out there against all his fellow players. Like it's got to be one or the other, because you had some good penalty minutes, brother.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, that was one thing when I got to junior and stuff. Like minor hockey, I was putting up a lot of points, like as so many people do. But then when you get to junior, like man, everyone can skate. Everyone's skilled, and you gotta. I remember as you're going, you gotta play with an edge if you want to get more ice time, that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, no, I'll be honest. I was a bit of a pest at times, and like getting in guys' faces and instigating and all that. So
love it. So did you do a lot of power skating then?
You know
Not
what?
with the skating abilities?
Looking back, I wish I would have done more at that young age. But power skating, it's gotten so much better too, as well. But I would go, yeah. You try and do more and more. But I really, my last probably 3 years. It was actually just before I went to sign with Montreal and Hamilton. The summer before that, or the year before that, I met my old trainer there in Richmond, who Sean knew. But we have another really good friend of mine, Derek Popke, who my agent had told me to get in and go skate with. There was actually Barb Adelbaum and who was in with the Canucks. She did some work. I did some edge work, but I was going with Popke. I'd probably say I was able to play another 2-3 years where I learned stuff my last 3 years in terms of skating that I wish I would have learned when I was younger and done more, because the way these guys skate now, it's unreal.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. So for AJ, you're captain of your hometown Kamloops Blazers of the WHL. You're in the Norfolk Admirals Hall of Fame, and I'm not sure if today, because I read this, it was like from 8 years ago, longest serving captain of the Admirals.
You know what?
That's what it said.
Yeah, maybe. It might be. I was trying to remember probably 3 years there, I think.
You were there 6 years as far as
Yeah.
So you're 3 years as the captain, right? Okay. Also, so you're known as a great leader in hockey. This is definitely in doing our research, 100%. How do you define leadership?
Good question.
I think that's probably not a one word or one sentence thing. I mean, first, I had a lot of great leaders ahead of me that I got to learn from, and I remember saying in our minor hockey team was extremely successful. We won a ton of games. We're in the Kamloops Hall of Fame and stuff. And
Nice.
my captain was actually a real good friend of mine, Brent Fritz, and he was a tireless worker, and he would do the tough thing all the time. And, you're young, you're like in your early teens and stuff. We're 12, 13, 14, and we would complain. Wow. And I remember Brent was like, we're doing it. And he didn't care what the other guys thought or said. Oh, look at Brent. And he did it. And I think that's one part that I learned. I learned a lot from him, but just sometimes you might have to stand alone sometimes as a leader. Yep. And it's not going to be easy. Not everyone's going to agree with you, but you got to do it. And then as you get older too, our Blazers team, I came the year after their last Memorial Cup. So we had Iginla, Dom McKelly, Lukowicz, Holland, Aaron Keller. We had just guys that had won a lot, and it all started in practice for those guys. I mean, they were so competitive in practice. Brad Lukowicz, Jerome. And I think that really was a big thing for me to see that just every single day in practice, how competitive they were, every single drill. Then you get to pro level too. Nolan Baumgart. I forgot to mention him because Nolan came back from Washington. He was actually our captain too. Then I actually had Nolan in Norfolk as well. Aaron Downey was my first captain there. And so I had great leaders all the way through. And I think you got to be able to, one of the things to describe good leadership, I think as a captain, you need to be able to connect with your teammates because you're going to have different type of teammates, personalities everywhere.
Yep.
And, feel like any one of your teammates can approach you too, being a leader. And if they have any questions and feel comfortable, especially young guys too, who it's their first year junior, first year pro, some of these guys are young, whether you're 16 and junior or 20 years old and pro. I mean, we're mid 40s now. It's young, and you're away from home. You can be from another country. Junior, you're away from your family, you're with billets. And I think that's a great off ice part of it. If you're comfortable off the ice, it's going to make the transition on the ice as easy as you can, because it's tough enough to play on the ice if things are tough off the ice.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think made you a good captain in particular? Because it obviously through your career, not just one team, but multiple teams thought you had the leadership to be captain. something made you a good captain. I'm just wondering what you thought it would be. That was.
You know what? It's a good question. I think I was able to relate to different, and I'm not saying other teammates couldn't. Maybe there's a part of that relating to, like I was just talking about, maybe people feeling comfortable around me is one thing. I think I was competitive. I think a good leader needs to be competitive. You got to be competitive, and so I think it's a fine line too about you can't be too nice and you can't be too hostile. You got to find happy mediums there where, sometimes I mean, there's leaders that lead on the ice very quiet, which I love and respect to. Then there's other vocal leaders, like you look at a guy like Taves, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he's a guy who's more vocal and very spirited. Like I love that kind of leader, the way he plays. And then you look at a guy like McDavid, right? Who's highly skilled, but just puts the team on his back and so there's many different types, and I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's tough for me to answer. Maybe you have to ask my teammates or something.
No, but I wanted to say that another thing that makes you a good leader. You have trouble. That's something that makes you a good leader. The humility.
He's very humble. Very humble.
And I think that's something that makes you a good leader right there, is that you're not going to come out and go, yeah, I'm this and I'm that. You have trouble because, that's the kind of guy people will follow.
I think he cares too. Like,
right.
Cares about the game, cares about winning, but also cares about the guys, right? And so even if he's holding somebody accountable or showing them the way, if you know that someone really values you and cares for you, you can take some harsh talk. You know what I mean? You can take someone stepping up and saying whatever. If it's like,
I think so.
Praise maybe.
Did Robin Bawa have an influence on your tough, tenacious style of play? If so, or if not, who was the influential person that formed you into the player that you eventually became? Because I checked you out, brother. You
know what? First, Robin is was a great influence on me, and I was 6, I believe, the first time I went to the Blazers game. So it would have been 1984, 85, and Robin was playing. I mean, that whole Blazers team. You'll remember some of the names: Rob Brown, Greg Hoggood, who's a good friend now. Hoggy lives in Kamloops. Dean. Mark Recchi. Dean Evison was there, but I was pretty young. Dean had already left, I think, when I was about 5 or 6. But Robin, I got to meet him after the game, and this he kind of ties to you. So it was after the game. Robin came up. It was at the old Memorial Arena, and his parents were actually in town at the game. And my dad had lived in Duncan for a while when he first moved to Canada, so he knew Robin's parents there. So they were chatting, and then Robin was laughing, and for me, it was kind of surreal, right? There's Robin, like I was telling you, he's got the movie star hair and that big strapping guy. And he was one of the best players on the team. I mean, he scored 50 goals in junior, and that was what you're kind of more in awe. And I was, like I said, you're pretty little, 6, 7, 8 when I was watching him. Then he started fighting a lot when he got older, right? So I was pretty young to know that Robin's fighting style influenced me, because that's like I said. But as I grew up, like I think the guys I watched that influenced I loved Steve Yzerman. He wasn't a tough player. That was my favorite player growing up. Tenacious. Big Wings fan, and not a big guy, but they kept falling short. And when they finally, won it, it was ecstatic to see the struggle and just how hard it was to win. I think that's another thing which I loved about it. And Dougie Gilmour was a little guy, but he played feisty. I remember those years when he was on the Leafs. But in terms of, I can't really say one player influenced there's so many players. There's so many players that you try and take bits. I mean, Darcy Tucker in Kamloops he played with a lot of emotion and spirit. He was putting up 150 points, and then he was fighting everybody.
He was here briefly.
Hey, and he was in
here in Montreal briefly, and then we traded him. I don't know if we traded him directly to the Leafs. And then I hated him because I'm not a Leafs fan in any way.
And then he went for Mike Johnson to Toronto. I still remember it.
Yeah, Mike Johnson was here too for a little while. Yeah,
he was there when I was there, when I was at camp. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
I kind of had a suspicious feeling that Robin had an influence on you, in some way, shape, or form.
Oh yeah, it was great, and getting to see him. And I think what I remember telling Sean, getting to actually, if I just watched him play, obviously he would have had an influence, but getting to meet him after. Yeah. And shake hands, like, okay, I met him, and I kind of, he said, hey, how are you doing? And then obviously I've gotten to meet him when I was working in hockey school with Derek Popke after I stopped playing. Robin's son Arjun was playing, coming up, just a young guy, and he was doing power skating with us.
Oh yeah,
and Arjun's playing in the WHL now.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to watch Robin. I'm standing there right at the corner, left side of the goalie. And Robin laid a hit on Gino Ojic, lambasted him into the boards, eh? And Ojic kind of speared him back, and I remember the gloves went flying, and I was just like, "Oh wow, okay." He laid the beats to Ojic right there in front of me, and I was like, "Good."
He was very tough, yeah.
Amazing. On that note, I'm curious. We're both curious. Did a player or did anybody teach you how to fight on the ice? Because that's a talent in itself to be able to fight on skates.
That's the only thing I was able to ever do was fight on the ice. So
yeah, no, you know what? There was a few guys, especially in junior, that gave some little tips just on how to fight. Jeff Ainsworth was one guy, played with me in Kamloops my first couple years, but a guy who showed us a lot of our youngest was Jerome. He actually was
Jerome McGinley?
Jerome McGinley, yeah.
I've heard he was a tough guy. He was.
Oh yeah, he was tough, and to switch over and being able to when you're in tight, what to do, switching your hands. I remember after practice. I mean, you're young and you haven't been in many fights, but yeah, some little stuff that you did. And then obviously I had a chance to play with a lot of tough guys in Norfolk. Like we had some tough guys: Sean Thornton, Mike Brown, Aaron Downey, Jimmy Vandermeer. Oh man, you can go Ty Jones. We had some big tough guys. We had some tough teams back then.
Well, you played
in
one
of your situations. I was watching. You took on Corey Sarge.
Yeah. Well, Corey grabbed me there. He's a big guy.
Did well.
I watched that fight. You were hanging on though a bit, right?
Yeah. He had a big reach on me, so I actually tried to switch over left because he was getting me, and I said, well, I'm not going to be able to. If I try and go right. So I tried to switch over, and I tried to get a few lefts, and I think I got him right in the visor on the one, but I didn't connect on that one.
The good of you to just hang in there with him for sure. AJ, which coaches that you played under had the most impact on you, like as a player and as a person?
Yeah, I had great coaches. I mean, right when I was in minor hockey, I mean, Mickey's not with us anymore, but Mickey Fritz was the first, our first our AAA coach, and I got to play a ton and get the confidence to play in any situation that way. And then you get to junior, and Ed Dempsey was here my first 2 years with the Blazers, and he gave me an opportunity, especially as a young guy, to play and earn your ice time. And then my last 2 years with the Blazers was Mark Habscheid, who had a huge impact on me. He was just a great coach, hard and fair, and earn what you get, and taught me a lot about how to be a pro and what you got to do about looking after yourself. And Mark actually, when I was playing pro, he was coaching Team Canada, and he actually called me to play for a Spengler Cup.
Nice.
Years later, and just owe him a lot for that. What an experience that was to go to Switzerland and put the Canadian jersey on.
That must have been awesome.
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Parents and brother got to fly over to Switzerland too at the time and enjoy it. And Mark actually was the connection for me to get a tryout in Norfolk, because Mark, his good friend was Trent Yanni, who Trent Yanni's was the other coach. Him and Mark had the two biggest impacts on me. So I had Trent for 5 years, and just a great guy, a very passionate coach about teaching and just competitive, and you learn a lot. Learned how to be a great, like, teaches everyone how to be a great pro, which is great. And
Important, yeah.
I'm pulling for LA. Mark and Todd, Trent and Todd McClellan. Todd was actually coaching against us at the time, but him and Trent had been together for years. So I'd love to see those two guys win a cup at some point. Yeah.
I picked LA last year in my bracket.
Oh, you did, eh?
Yeah, they lost early.
They're right there. They're better than they were last year. I think they're favorites again, but
yeah, no, they're a good team. I still like Phil Deneau, even though he left.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. Yeah,
you know, I got to tell you, look, the other coaches I had. I mean, Donnie Lever in Hamilton was great. Don Lever, great guy.
The old Buffalo Sabre, right?
Hey,
isn't he the old Buffalo Sabre? That Don Lever?
Yep, exactly. Right? Yeah,
I remember when I was a kid.
Yeah, Buffalo Canucks, and so he was there. Great coach, and I had Gordy Deneen my last year in Iowa, who was really liked Gordy, and I actually had Ryan McGill for a few months after I got traded from Norfolk to Calgary's farm team in Omaha, and Gilly was great. He gave me a chance to play a ton as well. I mean, yeah, I was very fortunate. Had a lot of good coaches.
And you did all this while having to deal with diabetes. Very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, awesome. Yeah. You played in the ECHL. This is off the script.
Johnny Marks was there. It was my first pro coach, and I forgot to mention Johnny was great. I got a chance to play my first year pro, and you need to play. Whenever you start, you need ice time and everything. And Johnny, I actually got to give Davis Payne a shout out too. I'm not sure if you heard of him. He's the assistant coach with the Ottawa Senators now.
Okay.
So that's why that name rung a bell. Okay.
Grew up with my brother. He's a Kamloops boy, so we were family friends. But I didn't have many options after I finished up with the Blazers. And Davis said, I visited that summer. He said, "You got nothing? Come down to Greenville. I'm assistant coach there, and come for a tryout." And so I got the invite from him and ended up making the team, John Marks, and it was unreal. It was just an amazing year in Greenville, South Carolina. And
the reason I asked was that's a tough league. Like it's tough there, right?
Yeah. It's
physical league, right?
Yeah. It's good. There's some skilled players there too.
Playing in the East. Go ahead.
Did it being like that kind of a tough game? Did that help with your physical game when you moved on?
So I fought quite a bit that year in the East Coast League. Kind of prepares you, but it's a great stepping stone from junior to the American Hockey League. It's a big step up from junior, and then you're there. So there's guys going up and down from the East Coast League and the AHL quite a bit.
Yeah.
And and I can't remember if the rules changed, but they only allowed to carry, I think, 10 forwards. So when you're in the lineup, like, you're playing a lot as opposed to 4 lines.
Right.
That's why it's the developmental leagues are huge, right?
Yeah, well, it's important, right?
Yeah.
This is great stuff, guys, because kids, growing up right now and whatnot, they're going to realize that diabetes is not going to hold them back from playing in the ECHL and whatnot, even though it's so tough to play in, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is great stuff.
So you won the Calder Cup 2007. Was with Montreal's farm team, the Hamilton Bulldogs at the time, and you scored the series-winning goal, the pinnacle of your career, and it's mentioned in the book. That goal. First, how did your association with the Canadians come about? Really interested in how that happened.
Well, I'll tell you. So one of my close friends here in Kamloops, who I played played junior with, met him in junior hockey, and then we remained very, very tight all through after we both left junior, was Steve Gainey. And Steve actually lives in Kamloops too, with his wife and 3 kids. And so Steve's dad, Bob, obviously you guys know this. Bob was GM of Montreal Canadiens. So it was actually Bob that signed me in summer 2006. I was a free agent in Chicago, and they were looking. They called and looking for a couple veteran guys, older guys in the AHL to help them out with a young farm team. And I'm forever indebted to Bob for giving me the opportunity. That 2-year contract with the Habs in Hamilton and everything just was gravy that year. That first year was ended up amazing. Just a great, a lot of memories there. Coming back to Canada to play after I'd been in the States for a while, where hockey was. I mean, Norfolk was a great hockey town, but in terms of like,
It's not the same.
On the paper, the Bulldogs were huge in Hamilton, and
yeah, definitely.
And well, we can get into that. That was another. Bob made a witty move that probably people don't know. Well, they know, but when he called Carey Price at the end of the year.
Right? Oh yeah. Oh, we're gonna talk about.
We're gonna get to that. I gotta. Yeah,
so I got a second part though that question. So you scored the winning goal in Game 5, and this part I had trouble finding the exact time. Pete found for me 10:27 left in the third period. So when you crashed into the boards after scoring the goal,
got the air and Baines, got the air up the right side, centers, Baines shoots, Ajay Baines!
Did you think you might have just scored the winning goal and the cup-winning goal?
Well, I never saw the puck go in, but then when you spun around, then you hear the crowd going crazy. You're like, "Holy shit, went in!" And then you get up, and Max and Danny and Brian were all skating by to tackle, and you're like, "Yeah, that went in. We got the lead." But you didn't think at that time you scored the winning goal to win it, because there's still 10 and a half minutes left.
10 minutes, yeah.
Still in a penalty. So, yeah, until the buzzer goes, you don't think you've won anything.
Besides, your focus. I thought that would be the case, because you don't want your focus off, and then you got to still concentrate for 10 more minutes for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sean, tell everyone where they can get a copy of this wonderful book.
Yeah, so Amazon's your best bet right now. So our distributor, has it. It's listed with our distributor, but how bookstores get it is sort of up to them when they upload it. So it should be available in bookstores at some point. And if you're in the U.S. watching this, it is available through Barnes & Noble. But nice. Here in Canada, I haven't seen it uploaded everywhere yet. But yeah, Amazon.ca. Obviously, I can send you guys the link to put up for your viewers. But that's the easiest way to do it these days.
Can you tell us, from your point of view, what you want the reader to take away from reading the book, and what inspired you to write it? Well, you've already.
I think the inspired. Yeah, we might have.
Yeah, you've answered the inspired.
Yeah, just a sense of joy, right? Like reading with your kids. Like we both have little kids, and that's the only time during the day that they sit still, quiet, right? So it's a joyful time for the family. No, it's amazing, right? Like they do. Most kids are really into books, and this one, obviously, we hope is really inspiring. But we think I think the illustrations are beautiful. So I want it to just be engaging and fun. And so whether you're into hockey or you have diabetes or you don't, it should just be a fun book that you can share, that you can get some laughs from, and have that sense of joy around reading. And that's really what you hope for from any book, especially
true.
Right? You're trying to connect with little kids and families. And
I love. Sorry.
Well, we've just been really fortunate that we've got to read at schools too. So we got to read at our kids' school, which is just amazing, right? Like the kids think you're total rock.
That's nice. Right? Yeah. No, that's
nice. And then there's students with diabetes, right? And so this sort of it really puts it into perspective for them, where it's like, yeah, there are no limits on you these days, you know, like you can still do anything that you put your mind to. And then it's really cool for their classmates. Like we were in a classroom with one of the students had diabetes, and we find like when we talk to some classes, all they want to talk about is hockey, or we talk to some older kids and they just want to talk about books and writing and being creative in art. And then this class with the student who had diabetes, all the kids wanted to talk about was like AJ's pump and like how it worked. And it's fascinating to kind of
That's awesome.
things that people like. This is a 28, 30-page book. Like it's not, you know what I mean? You're not inundated with text and information, but there's so many things that these kids are pulling out of it. It's really cool.
I love it. I love poetry. I write so similarly to you. I'm not saying style-wise, but just that type of stuff, right? I love reading poetry because basically, I mean, it's what it is. And yeah, I really enjoyed. I've read it 3 times today already. Partially to know what's inside, but I love the cadence and all that of that. So yeah. But by the way, I just want to say, if anybody out there would like to donate to Diabetes Canada, there's going to be a link in the description for you to do that. So that's very important.
Awesome.
So listen, since this is a Habs, it's a Habs YouTube fan channel. That's basically what we are. And AJ, you played on the Hamilton Bulldogs with a whole host of guys. Pete, you're going to list them off.
Guys that you played with and against, like you mentioned, Jerome McGinley, Scott Niedermayer, Shane Doan, Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook, Dustin Bufflin, Carey Price, Maxim Lapierre, Ryan O'Byrne, Monster, Grabowski, Chipchura, Matt D'Agostini. Dude, that's just to mention a few. I mean, that's a premium list of players you guys played with. And I got a quote from Duncan Keith that's in your book, and he states, "As a first-year hockey player, I was lucky to have a leader like AJ on my team. He always had my back and looked out for the younger guys all the time." And, you know, you got another guy, Maxim Lapierre, that's got a quote out there that I found. And it was in the Hamilton Spectator, and he goes, "While apprenticing with Hamilton, my older teammate was one of the guys that taught us how to be a pro, how to eat, sleep, and what to do around the game to be your best." Like,
paying it forward, right?
Dude, my chest is just like, oh my God, look at this guy, you know?
No, those are humbling words, man. And 2 of my
Dude, what does that do for
favorite
you?
teammates.
How does it make you feel?
Yeah, it's proud. I mean, yeah, it's awesome knowing. I mean, they're both great friends, and I think that's the biggest thing you take is you got a couple great friends like that, and seeing those 2 guys, Max and Duncan, the careers they had was pretty awesome. I mean, I got to sip out of the cup from Dunk and Seabrook a couple times with Chicago. Nice. They bring it back which was just a blast. But I remember Max when Vancouver lost to Boston, I felt bad when they lost it because he was so close. But yeah, great. I was very lucky to play with those guys. A lot of great teammates I had.
You got a lot of respect from a lot of players out there, brother. A lot of respect.
Yeah, thanks. That's no, those are, like I said, those are very humbling words.
Well, can you tell us what Carey Price was like when he was not yet the best goalie of his generation? Because Carey Price is a legend here. He's just a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's everything that you guys see in terms of a legend. He was like that, like as the 1920. I remember meeting him at training camp, and then he went back to Tri-Cities to play. I got to tell the story before I talk a bit about Carey. It's hilarious. Pete, have you heard this story?
I'm hoping it's answering my question.
It is. So Carey got called up, and at the end of the year, and then I lived with Ryan O'Byrne, Matt D'Agostini, and Kyle Chipchura.
Yeah,
I was the old guy there, and we lived in a little campus. Max Lapierre was living right next to us, and but we said, "Carey, why don't you come over to our place for dinner that night? We're at the rink." So Carey was like, "Okay," because he was staying at the hotel.
Yeah,
just got called up. So we brought Carey over, and the guys had their Xbox, I think it was, chipper. I can't remember what he had, but he had like soccer, World Cup soccer, and all this stuff. And so they're playing, and I'm sitting on the table, and Steve Gainey just called me that day. Stevie was playing. What was Steve playing that year? I can't remember what team he was on. If he was in San Antonio or no, he had actually stopped playing already for a year. It was the year he went back to coach with the Blazers. And then he came back and played pro. But he's like, hey, I heard you guys called up Kerry. I go, yeah, he's actually right here. And he's like, yeah, we coached against him in Tri. He was unbelievable this year. I said, yeah. I go, the World Juniors. And I met him at training camp, and Steve's just like, it was a little funny story. He goes, 1985, Montreal called up a 19-year-old goalie, and he to Sherbrooke, and they threw him in net before the playoffs. They won the Calder Cup, and I was like, let me guess, Patrick Waugh. And Steve's like, exactly. And I'm like, and we're starting playoffs in a week, so I'm on the phone. I'm like, hey, Kerry, you hear that? 22 years ago, Habs called up a 19-year-old goalie. He won the Calder Cup and MVP. And no word of it. Like, Kerry was like this, and he's playing video games. Like, so that's it? That's all I got to do? Okay. And when we won it, we're celebrating, and I'm looking at him like, son of a gun. I'm like, he said this 2.5 months ago. That's all I got to do.
Amazing. Confidence.
So he had a confidence, but he was such a nice kid. Like, just a humble guy. Love him like a brother. Like, just fun to be around, giggling, laughing, and always in a good mood. And it's funny, in the finals against Hershey, we won game 1. Game 2, we were losing, and they were taking it to us pretty good. I think it was at the second period, and Kerry hadn't said really a word all playoffs. He just kind of ho-hum, does his stuff, and then he just kind of stood up. He looked around. He said, and he just says, "We all better wake the F up in here. This isn't good enough." And everyone kind of just looked over, and it was just like, "Oh, who cares? He's not happy right now." But he was so competitive. He wanted to win so bad, and it was awesome.
Wow.
I love that.
You answered all the questions that I had coming at you with that story. I needed to hear. Like, I read that you were invited to the Habs camp and all that, and you suffered that MCL tear when somebody landed on your knee. I presume you got better and whatnot, and then you injured your back in Hamilton or something?
I think so, yeah.
This is just what I've found on the internet,
yeah.
Trying to do some research on you. Because, you got the high penalty minutes, you're scoring goals like a madman, you're playing an all-around great game and whatnot. So you get yourself better, and you did a stint with the Iowa Stars, like you spoke about. Now, some places call it the Chops, some places call it the Stars. It's Chops.
At that time, we were called the Iowa Chops. Because Sean came down and visited.
Okay.
And another buddy of ours, they got to, for my birthday, they came down and got to see a couple games. Yeah, but they're called the Stars now, right?
Yeah.
Is it Minnesota? It's Dallas's farm team there now?
I guess, and it's the Stars.
It's the Stars. Yeah. I thought Minnie was there for a bit too, but yeah, they were Anaheim's farm team. It was just the 1 year.
Okay.
And then they relocated. Yeah.
Wow.
So I've read that you got offers from Europe and the AHL, and I was just curious why I read some stuff, but being a competitor and the kind of person you are, I'm just wondering why you didn't pursue that avenue, maybe going to Europe or coming back to the A or whatnot.
Yeah. No, great question, Pete. It was, it was weird. My last year in Iowa, and I talked to a couple of my teammates. I remember Brian Salcido and a couple guys, and I remember thinking, I'm just like, yeah, in my head, I remember talking to them, and I was like, it's just kind of like, this feels like I'm this is my last year. And it's weird to say that, like that how could you feel that? How do you know that you didn't want to keep playing, Brian? I remember Sal's like, what do you mean? You can still play. It's like, you got opportunities in Europe and all this stuff. And the thing about Europe, and here I'll tell you, there's two parts to the Europe thing. A lot of guys go when they're younger and they're single. And then a lot of guys go if they're older and they got a family and stuff, and they go do that. I was early 30s. I was single. I was kind of not on either of those. And I think because I talked to a lot of people about Europe. Some people have great experiences. Some people didn't have good experiences too. So that was one of the things. And I knew like I wanted to get, I missed home. I did. I've been playing pro for 10 years. I think the second year in Hamilton, I remember I had the 2 injuries, like you said. And I just, at the end of the year, I remember I wasn't happy with the way I played that year. My last year in Iowa, I was healthy the whole year. And I felt great. I felt like I was productive, and
yeah, you totally had a resurgence.
It just kind of came to me. I wanted to get back. My dad was getting older. Dad wanted to say, "Oh, keep playing and stuff. You know, this work will be here when you come back." But it was just kind of at a stage in life where you're like, I think I'm ready for something else. And I'm very, very fortunate to have that, because a lot of people, you know, after you stop playing, like, what am I going to do next? And Dad,
so it had nothing to do with diabetes or anything like that.
No, okay. I was healthy, and it's a great question, Pete, but it was just one of those things where you're fortunate, where you have something else to kind of get back into and get taking some courses, get my mind going again, and all that. But I always said I went to Europe the next year, went and travel. I'm like, I think it would have been a great experience, love it. But I was like, I can go travel there. Do I need to go play hockey there? Why not just go see it and see the world? There's so much more I want to travel to that we didn't do.
Yeah. I get it.
I think for things like that, it's hard to explain, but somehow you just know when it's when you're done.
Yeah. Like something that I read said that your internal body clock, somebody had quoted you as saying it was your internal body clock, and that's why you were giving it up. And I was like, no, that doesn't sound right. I need to know.
In a way, I mean, in a way, it kind of, maybe that is the explanation, but it's something that just, you don't know how to explain it. You just know. Yeah, I've had that feeling in other things before.
It's a great question, though, Pete.
AJ, what would you say to a young boy or girl with diabetes that has athletic dreams that you might, come into contact with?
Yeah, I mean, I think dream big, and you get to control it. One thing about diabetes, and the most important thing, is you get to control it. You get to control what you put in your body. You get to control how much you exercise. I mean, so you can do anything if you're just fanatic about it, and I'm determined about it in terms of, I'm going to cut out sugars, I'm going to cut out this, and and nutritionists, and there's so many dietitians now that can help you with all this stuff. I mean, there's some great athletes out there. I'm a huge tennis fan, and Alexander Zverev, who, I don't know how he hit it for so long. He just came out last year. He's top 5 in the world, top 10 right now. I think he had a bad injury last year, but type 1 diabetic. And I'm like, that's one sport I was like, holy smokes, how was he able to do that? And even for me, I was like, playing for a team, you make mistakes, you can hide behind your teammates.
Right.
And he's out there all alone, and 5 hours in the sun.
Yeah, it's a grueling sport.
He's had some wars with Nadal and Djokovic, and I'm like, it's amazing. So him right there is actually, this day and age, that any athlete can do anything.
True. And with the equipment now, like I said, that you put it there, you touch it, you don't have to go through the pinprick, you don't have to do all the blood. It's just instantaneous, really easy, especially in tennis where you don't have that break. Really,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's 2 seconds. Yeah, so that makes sense. One for Sean, because we didn't forget about Sean.
Oh God.
What kind of feedback have you been getting from parents of kids with diabetes from the book?
Yeah, it's pretty heartwarming stuff, right? Like there was some parents at our kids' school and some other schools, and they're just, they're asking us to go in and talk to the class and say hi to the kids and just talk about diabetes in the book and hockey, and you can just feel the love, right? Like you can feel that, again, like that this can have a positive impact on someone's day or week or month or whatever is such an amazing feeling. And I would say we get every school has a diabetic kid now, right? Like it's
yeah.
it's pretty prolific. So
Yeah. With the food we eat today,
yeah, and just it's diagnosed, so much better now. So it's amazing, right? Like it's such a cool part of publishing books, but then this book has that next level of reach. I'd say it's not just like cute and funny. It's got some meat to it, right?
Where you can get feedback from parents and actually see how your books affected kids, on an individual level. Yeah, that is a good feeling.
Yeah.
Last question now is for both of you guys. What are you guys hoping that this book accomplishes? I don't know if we've actually covered that yet, but maybe not.
What do you think? Sure. So first, I a lot of what we've talked about, right? Like you don't really go into writing children's books to buy a yacht someday. They don't tend to be you don't tend to be drowning in money on them. It's such an amazing experience, right? And so this was an amazing experience for me to write this with a guy I've known my whole life, and now we have this thing that lasts forever. You know what I mean? Like his kids will probably be reading this. Like that's a really cool, like intergenerational, antique to have. And then you go to the next step where it's like we do stuff like this, which is super fun. And we were at the Blazer game the other night, and seeing the fans were like taking pictures with them. You know what I mean? Like it's just a lot of fun. And then you get that extra step where it's like you're having a positive impact on people's lives. Like and you might not see them every day, but you kind of get that feedback trickling in where, oh, my son hasn't stopped reading this, or my daughter cried, or like this meant we read this every night. That stuff I think that's the real goal for me.
Yeah. I remember when Sean first approached, he said one of the first things about it was like, how cool would it be? My daughter's name is Mila. I was like, for Mila to read a book about your career. And that was kind of where it started. And then, so there's that part with the kids. And then I think like everything Sean said, if it does impact any children, like who have diabetes or who, just playing, like, I think it was a kind of very upbeat and uplifting book.
I agree with that.
And big picture stuff too, like you could say, it just normalizes it too for kids who don't have diabetes. So when they have a kid in their class with diabetes, it's not like this super weird other thing. It's just like people have diabetes and they can do whatever.
Yeah,
and we move on. And kids are great at that, right? They're probably better than adults.
And that's a aspect. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, that's I haven't gotten my copy yet, but I do look forward to reading this when I do finally get it.
No, like I said, I've read it 3 times already today.
Awesome.
I'm really honored to have done this interview. Thanks, you guys were like awesome for the interview. I know thanks so much. Yeah, we're just thrilled to have you here, and I'm sad that it's over because I was having a great time talking with you guys.
Thanks so much, guys. Pete, great to meet you, man. Hey?
Nice to meet you guys.
It's good to meet you too.
All right, so